Hi everyone, my name is Debbie and I am the shrink on your couch. You may or may not be aware of me, but I created the group Bariatric Mind Masters in response to what I thought was a desperate need within bariatric circles for a group that focuses specifically on head and heart hunger and on the mental, emotional struggles that plague us as bariatric patients. If you're lucky, you're not plagued initially, fresh out of surgery. Sometimes people get a sort of golden glow year where everything is great. But if you're not lucky, you might actually battle almost from day one with compulsions, with hunger, with feeling like nothing has really changed. And if you're incredibly unlucky, you might not even experience the amount of restriction that is required for significant weight loss in the short term. But this video is for you if you are struggling with regain. This video is for you if you are stalled and if you're feeling a bit despondent and a bit hopeless. What I'm going to tell you, I know, is not rocket science. I know that much of it isn't. But what is rocket science is the fact that we need to be continuously returning to our commitment to our journey, and that we need to be very careful not to lose hope, not to become despondent, and not to lose faith. The faith I'm talking about is not spiritual, it's faith in our own ability to ever overcome the struggle of obesity and of compulsive eating. I battle with this myself daily. I am at goal weight, I know that, but it's not miraculous. I have had to work really, really hard to not fall back into old patterns. And sometimes I do fall back into old patterns. In fact, I am currently, and this is partly what I want to speak to you about, is how, so I'm changing tack a little bit, but I'll come back to that train of thought. I want to speak to you if you feel like you need some sort of back on track plan. This is where I was going. I am currently on day 6 of a 7-day personal reset. Now, I don't do that pouch reset that go back to liquids and start from scratch. That doesn't work for me. I like to eat food, and I feel a bit restricted and deprived when I do that. But my reset is where I decide that for 7 days, not forever, because forever is too long, it's too overwhelming, and we'll give up by 10 a.m. We can never do forever. But I decide that for 7 days, I'm going to eat perfectly on plan. And so for me, it will mean different things for different people. Everybody has their own plan, and I'm incredibly respectful of that. But for me, it means 3 meals a day. It means breakfast, 6 hours later lunch, 6 hours later dinner. It means a huge amount of water. I aim for 3 or 4 liters of water, and that's specifically because I occasionally get caught up in only drinking diet soda and black coffee. I'll be very honest. And I don't mind those things in moderation, but I reach a point where I realize that my moderation has now become excessive and it's time to pull it back. And usually I reach that point at the same time as I'm 3 or 4 pounds up on the scale. And so I need a dramatic intervention. I don't want a dramatic intervention. I actually want to just keep doing exactly what I'm doing, but I need a dramatic intervention. And so I go back to 3 meals a day, no diet soda, 3 to 4 liters of water per day. I allow myself 2 or 3 cups of black coffee. I do not snack at all, because I find my biggest head hunger pitfall is where I allow myself snacks, even unplanned snacks. So, the things that our dietitians recommend, but that then it just opens that snacky door. And then it's easier to reach for a few potato chips, for a piece of chocolate, for something that my kids are nibbling on. It's just easier because that snacking door is already open. Whereas if I prepare for myself 3 solid meals and I actually sit and eat them very mindfully, consciously, I do nothing else but eat the meal that I've prepared, and I savor it and I eat it slowly and I enjoy it, and I make sure that it is actually food that I do enjoy, then it feels a little bit easier to contain myself. So I recommend that for you, that if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you're feeling despondent, that you decide on a 7-day back on track plan, and you decide what that means for you, and that you start to implement it possibly from tomorrow. It's Monday anyway, so it's a good time to do that. And, I'm always aware that our sleeve or our pouch, whatever you have, is there to draw on, to fall back on whenever you need it. Sometimes we feel that our surgery has failed, or we've failed, or we have no restriction anymore, or we can eat so much. We can eat almost as much as we could pre-surgery. But there really is almost a magic to going back to basics and then becoming conscious of the restriction and realizing that it was always there, but we were just working around it. You can work around your restriction by grazing, so just by eating constant amounts of, constant small amounts of food, or you can work around it with slider foods, with foods that just go down really easy. They're usually the really unhealthy, high-fat, high-calorie options. But I find that when I return wholeheartedly to my plan, that I have the restriction, and that actually I'm not that hungry, and that if I've made a decision that I'm not snacking, then snacking is not an option. And if it's not an option, when I feel peckish and I feel like I want to reach for something, that I don't, because I decided that I wouldn't. And so I have to take control of my mind and steer it in the direction that is aligned with the decision that I took. And I know that many of you are really winning, but those of you that aren't, I happen to know that you're also really successful in other parts of your life. And that's an important point in Bariatric Mind Masters, is that just because you feel like a wreck and a disaster in some places doesn't mean that you don't actually own the tools and the skills and the knowledge of how to steer yourself out of a tricky situation in other areas of your life where you are successful. And it's useful to meditate on that a little and to give yourself credit where it's due, and then to see which tools could be mined from those parts of your life and applied to your eating world. That also helps with confidence, because there's, I really feel for many of you who post about how much you're struggling. And I'd like you to think about successes that you have in other parts of your life and focus on those, meditate on those, both because you need the confidence and the sense of competence, but also because often the strategies for success are very similar. You just need to learn to apply them to your eating world. So I have a tendency to ramble, and I don't want to bore you, but if this speaks to you, I would really suggest that you think about a 7-day reset. Not the pouch reset, not the liquids and stuff. I'm not a fan of that. But just your eating plan, a return to yourself. And that daily, while you are doing your reset, you also tend to yourself from a self-love, self-care, and spiritual perspective. So make a point of journaling every day, dumping your feelings onto a page, dumping your thoughts onto a page. Somehow that makes us less compulsive, and we feel more contained and better equipped to make decisions that are not emotional or irrational. That's important. And I also recommend to my Bariatric Mind Masters participants that they download guided meditation apps. Specifically, I like Headspace. I think that's fantastic. And also Calm. They're both free. I have no stake in their game, but they both offer, a series of free trial run guided meditations, which I'd like you to try, because as much as it might seem a bit superfluous or irrelevant when I'm saying it now, I think that if you download it and you switch on one, they're only 10 minutes at max. If you play one, you'll understand what I'm talking about in terms of calming you down, centering you, grounding you, and focusing your mind to take the decision that needs to be taken in order to do one concerted effort. Because this is not about willpower. So it's not willpower that's going to get you to day 7. It's the power of your decision. I was at a conference in Cape Town last weekend, and the speaker said that the root word or the root meaning of decide is something like to die. That every other alternative has to die when we decide to take one course of action. And that's why I'm sometimes of the view that we actually haven't decided even when we think we have. Because if other alternatives are options, we're probably not there yet. So if you are ready this week to let snacking die, just for 7 days, to go into hibernation, to die, if you are ready to wake up and make your breakfast because you decided to, and then 6 hours later make your lunch because you decided to, and to do the Headspace app every single day for 10 minutes because you decided to, then all the whims and the emotional push and pull and impulses and I don't feel like it and I don't want to somehow become less significant. It's useful to speak to your angst and your pain. It's useful to say, I'm feeling this terrible urge and I'm feeling like I just want to self-sabotage and I'm going to wreck this. Don't try and push that voice away. Just acknowledge it. Just say, okay, craving, there you are, wanting to derail this process. And I hear you and I know you're there, but I've decided that I'm going to do this today. And so I am going to, but I'm going to dump all of those thoughts and feelings into my journal so that I get them out and I manage them and I contain them there. But I'm not managing them in the kitchen, not this week. So I apologize that this has been nearly 15 minutes, but if you're still with me and this has spoken to you, then you're welcome to comment and we can pick up a conversation around it. Have a lovely Sunday.